Hi, it's Rachel with Stirring the Deep. So I'm diving into this new and living way in which we are communing and we are part of God. Is that morning star, that light is in you. And so the way that you commune with God is in that present within you all the time. He's directly writing his words of truth on your heart. Okay, on your soul. That's his divine character is becoming more and more a part of you, so that what flows out, you're now becoming this being that everything flows out from. Okay, when you're in death, it's like you're trying to gather everything into you because there's this bottomless pit within you and you're trying to fill it. But what happens is it's never filled because it's a bottomless pit. The only way you do it is by getting the living waters within you and that abundance within you. And then when you start getting that, you're so filled with it all the time, and then it's just flowing outward. So that's where you have that heart that's just so giving. That's where that love just starts to flow out. That's where you're just being that light, and it's creating this peace and harmony, because the sons of God are the ones that create the peace. They're the peacemakers. So when you're a son of God, you have the light in you. That's what you're doing. So now that's what this time is about. It's about stepping outside of the ark, coming in into the day, and letting lights shine. Because in the ark they couldn't shine. They're hidden. And the ark was symbolized of abiding in the womb, of abiding in the word, of that time of when it's protecting you and it's guiding you and it's feeding you and all those things. But now you've got to come out into the light of day, because that olive branch has come forth. This is a very important step to take, because if you don't let go of the old, you can't embrace the new. Okay? And you need to embrace the new, because that's how you're lit. That's how you grow into eternal life. Is having that oneness with the Spirit of God, who he's always with you. Now, his heart is your heart, your desires, his desires, your will, his will. There is no disconnect. So there's nothing that you have to go to that's in between, because you've learned. That Bible was a tool to bring you to God. But once you come into that character of God, when that starts to be knit, now there's a point where you now have to be joined to him. Okay? That's coming out of the ark. That's coming out of the womb, and let the umbilical cord being cut. The thing about the Bible is, the Bible was like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay? And that's what you would see. You would see both in the Bible. Okay? Good and evil and all this stuff. And what the Bible has created, and ultimately with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil too, is judgment. It's man's judgment about what is good and what is evil. Okay? And so we're standing as judge, what is good, what is evil. So when you're learning and reading in the Bible, that's what you're doing. You're becoming a judge. Well, this is of God, this isn't of God. This is a picture of God, this isn't a picture of God. Even the Bible and the way it's written is judging God in different ways. Wow, here's this wrathfulness of God. Here's the love of God. It's like, it's full of a judgment. And that's when you see all these religions that have come out of it, they're full of judgment, because that's what it was. But it was in that God used, because that was the state of our soul. We were trees of knowledge of good and evil. So in that tree, God buried access to the tree of life, which is his pure character, that Spirit of Christ. So if we sought through that tree of good and evil to really know God, you found him. It was the hidden manna. You found his character beneath all those stories, all those things. And again, that's what gets pulled out, and that's what you get connected to. Then you leave the tool behind. But that's what it was standing as, is that tree of knowledge of good and evil, and that's what it created. So then you get to this point where you're always trying to discern, is this good, is this not, and that's what it felt like. Okay? So when you start to truly partake of the tree of life, that is just partaking of the truth. You're letting go of all judgments. Okay, so you're not judging anymore. You have given your heart over to be God's heart. You have given your desires to be His desires. You've given your will to be His will. And so that means He's making all the judgments, He's governing everything. And a big part of this is letting go of images. I've talked a lot about that. It's our image of what it means to be a godly person. You know, what do they look like? What do they dress like? How do they present themselves? And a lot of times what we do on this earth is we find the images and then we try to put ourselves into those images. That's the way of death. That is not the way of life. And the Bible was full of images, right? What it means to be a godly person, or what it means like this. And so that's why you have all these religions full of all these images coming out of it. But again, that isn't God. It was His tool to bring you to Him. Okay? And ultimately, that's what you discover as you come to the point where you see this contrary nature, where you know God is this most perfect, loving Father. And so then you see parts in the Bible that aren't in line with that. And you realize that was also part to teach you who He's truly not. Because that's what you see when you start seeing His character. You kind of understand where all of those things were coming from, but you understand His true character. And that's why I often say, wow, the Bible can be so misleading if you're not having God teach you, because it's presenting Him in a way that isn't accurate. Okay, but if you're trusting Spirit to teach you, that's what He shows you, so you know Him. But what that also allows you to do is realize, you know what, God, that time of death is done. Death is going to be destroyed. Okay, that death is destroyed when life infuses it. So it's like you have to let go of all the things that were of death. And so that Bible, it was always presenting that good and evil, the both sides. You even saw the both sides of God in there, or perceptions of God. Okay, that's something that you have to be very clear. The Bible is showing different perceptions of God, because it's about us being tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, we're making the judgments. That's what it was with Adam and Eve. The moment they took of that tree, they were making their own judgments instead of just trusting God's truth. All right, and so they were judging good and evil. And so that's what you see in that perception of the Bible toward God. So now it is time to partake of the tree of life. Okay, and the only reason we understand all these concepts is because of the Bible. So you see it served a very important purpose. Okay, but that's what its purpose was. It isn't to be how we commune with God forever. Eventually, you come out of the womb, you cut the umbilical cord, and you start living in life. And how different does that look? So when you start leaving that Bible behind and you're letting go of all images, good and evil, you're letting go of all images in your relationship with God. So He used it to teach you, but now it's time to let it go, because for Him to be married to you, you can have no images of Him, because He's living. He is going to create every present moment as He wants to. So that's why you can't have images for what you're going to look like, who you're going to be, what's your life going to look like. You know, you can't have images around anything about who you are, who in your marriage, okay, to your spouse. You got to let go of all images, cardboard cutouts, ideals that you have in your mind that you're trying to fit that marriage into, that you're trying to fit yourself into, that you're trying to fit God into. Okay, what you're trying to fit, what it means to be a godly person, you're trying to fit it into that image. You got to let all that go, because as long as you're doing that, you are still judging. You're still eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're still playing judge. That time is over. You have to come into the new and living way. We're eating of the tree of life. You are the tree of life. That's that seed growing up in you, where now you're at rest. because you're no longer doing any of that. You had to work, right? To work through all the darkness, to work through the lies. I mean, that's just a part of where we were in our minds. But now you can let go of all those images because you can trust God. Because when you really know Him and you know His character, you realize that is the heart of all things. And that is really what creates everything. So you don't need to worry about, what your life will look like, what your purpose will look like, what your marriage will look like, what God looks like. You don't have to worry about any of that, just like God created. It's like the light that's shining in you is revealing to you the reality that God's creating for you. Because as long as you have an image of what that reality should be, you're going to try to course correct to that. That's you judging. You guys, that is done. That is done. That is the old way. That is the old way of death, right? But through that journey of seeking, it brought you to this point of letting go, to having a true oneness with God, a true marriage union where you are so intimate, you don't need a book. Another way of looking at it is like you're getting prepared to get married, and you've been reading a book about, how that works and how you're, how to have this marriage and how to come to that. But once you come to it, you let it go, because now is the time to embrace that and let God create what He wants to in your life and not hold on to anything of the past. Until next time, keep stirring the deep. It's the one thing that changes everything else.